If you ask somebody what the greatest operating system they've ever used is, you'd probably get a variety of answers. Some may say Linux, probably because it's modular and free and open source and whatnot, even if it's not perfect. I'd probably say OpenSteelOS, because I'm biased towards my own creations. But many people would probably respond with one of two different versions of Windows. Windows 7, which we're not going to get into today, and Windows XP, primarily because back in the day, Windows was nowhere near as bad as it is today, which probably has given people nostalgia for it. So, how usable is Windows XP in 2026? What can still be done on it? And can you browse the internet on it? Those are some great questions, so let's get started. So, for a bit of background, we have to go to around the late 90s, while Windows 2000 was still in development. According to a calendar of upcoming Microsoft product releases for the coming years, Windows 2000 was intended to release in September of 1998, months after Windows 98's release. While in 2000, Microsoft would release the first consumer version of Windows NT, codenamed Neptune. Microsoft was also developing another NT project, a business successor to 2000 known as Odyssey. However, Windows 2000 would be delayed and would not ship until late 1999, by which point Microsoft was already compiling builds for Neptune. However, both Neptune and Odyssey were scrapped, with Odyssey being scrapped so early in its development that according to BetaWiki, there are currently no known builds of it to exist, and it's unlikely that builds of it are to exist. In these two projects' place, Microsoft decided to consolidate the consumer and business markets for the next version of Windows, codenamed Whistler and part of a 3-version plan, which included Windows Longhorn and Windows Blackcomb. Development began on Whistler relatively quickly in late 1999, with the earliest known builds being compiled in the opening days of the new millennium. Over the next year and a half, Microsoft made some radical changes to the OS, including the use of the final name being Windows XP, a redesign of the Windows logo, the one I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with, and the introduction of a new UI style known as Luna, which was much more vibrant and colorful compared to what Windows 2000 looked like. And in May of 2001, Microsoft announced that the new version of Windows would be slated for an October 2001 release. Jim Olchin told the BBC that this release date would be too late for the important back-to-school market, but that Microsoft was hoping to cash in on the holiday season, and that quality came first. Some people did not take this lightly, mainly shareholders, and Microsoft shares dropped by $1.29. It should also be noted that people said that XP's changes could lead to people being discontent with Microsoft and switching to Linux, which at the time had been on a high that was so high that probably only these days can parallel it. But Windows XP released to manufacturing in August of 2001 and to the general public in October. Mark Ward of the BBC was provided with a release candidate build to look at, and installing it went off without a hitch, and he noted that the UI colors and empty desktop were signs that Microsoft had significant changes in store for Windows. He noted that the icons had a chunky, cartoonish look to them. Overall, he discussed how different XP was to Windows 98 and other OSs. While on the 4th of September, Matt Lake of CNET said that grudgingly, Windows XP was worth the pre-release hype, stating that the experience was more streamlined, and with anything of such a radical overhaul as that of Windows XP, it would take time to get used to, and despite its annoyances, XP was worth upgrading to or getting with the next PC you bought. XP remained as Microsoft's flagship OS for the next 6 years, being superseded by the disastrous Windows Vista in 2007 and holding on to strong market share until Windows 7 overtook it in the 2010s. In 2014, Microsoft ended support for Windows XP, at least to the general public, and that's that. So the computer I'm going to be using for this is my Lenovo ThinkCentre M58. Nope, that's having some odd issues. My HP Compact 6005 Pro USD. Nope, that's also having issues. My Lenovo ThinkCentre A70. I was originally going to use my Lenovo ThinkCentre M58, but it seemed to be having some weird things with my Windows XP install. Surprisingly, Windows XP is usually quite stable, but for some reason when I try to use it, Explorer likes to crash. But I'm going to be using Media Center Edition 2005 on the ThinkCentre A70 because it's a fairly decent PC. It originally shipped with Windows 7, and I previously used it as my main Windows Vista PC, a role that it served quite well, and it has a dual-core 2.8 GHz Intel Pentium E5500, 4 GB of RAM, and integrated graphics. So, a relatively solid PC for the job. And with that, I think we should go turn it on and look at the OS proper now. Notable new features and programs in Windows XP include the sidebar in Windows Explorer, which provides a list of tasks and locations that you can then view. This changes depending on the folder selected, but it is incredibly useful and more user-friendly compared to Windows 98, Millennium Edition, and 2000. As like the welcome screen, which is a new user-friendly and intuitive way to switch the user compared to Windows 98 and 2000 and whatnot. It can be disabled, but it's fairly useful, and so yeah. Windows XP also comes with Windows Movie Maker, a video editing program from Windows Millennium Edition that is fairly simple, user-friendly, and was used by many back in the day. This version of Windows also comes with Windows Media Center, a full-screen application that is for all of your media viewing needs, providing a music player, video player, photo viewer, and other things all in one thing. This was exclusive to the Media Center edition, but it would not be in later versions of Windows. Popular programs from Windows XP's time include Microsoft Office 2003 with stuff like Word and Excel, Adobe Photoshop CS2, Macromedia Flash MX 2004, Mozilla Firefox, and Winamp. So now, it's time to look at how usable Windows XP is in 2026. Now, in my Windows 98 and 2000 videos, I used what were the last version of programs as my baseline. However, with Windows XP and its end of support, software developers start to take things differently and offer the final versions of their programs for Windows XP on their websites and whatnot. I'm not sure if this is done much anymore in 2026 because this is an OS that ended support in 2014, but I have at least some things. If I hadn't forgotten the right version of Opera and Pencil 2D not wanting to cooperate even though it said it's a Windows XP version. The one example I'm going to show here of final programs to support Windows XP would be Adobe Reader 11, which it's Adobe Reader, I don't really need to go in detail about it. Among programs that still support Windows XP, there is still, as mentioned in the Windows 98 and 2000 videos, Clamwin Antivirus, Image Burn, and 7-Zip. However, those three are now joined by a number of more notable programs. Perhaps the biggest example would be VLC Media Player, which still supports Windows XP to this day and apparently can work on 9X using kernel X, but that's for another time, and I can confirm, yes, it works. VLC will play videos and stuff, and it's basically alright. And there's also IrfanView, which I remembered works on XP off the top of my head, and yes, it still supports Windows XP. It's an image viewing program, and I haven't tried it much. This is like the first time I've ever used it, but who knows, probably a second time someday. Alright, I know what you're here for. Let's just rip the band-aid off and give it a go. Yes, you can browse the web on Windows XP, but it should be stated that if you plan to use Windows XP online, be very careful. Do not click any weird links, do not go on any unsafe sites, and try to limit your internet connection. I'm going to be using Supermium for this because it's the most modern and up-to-date browser for Windows XP, and yeah, I'm not going to go into much detail on this, but sites like Wikipedia are perfectly browsable. You can also browse things on GitHub without much issue, even if the fonts do not render correctly. And even stuff like YouTube videos can be played, albeit they're kind of choppy, and I would not recommend doing it, as they do not play smoothly both visually and audibly. And for context, this is only in 480p, which is what YouTube defaults to. So yes, you can browse the web on Windows XP, but you should be very careful about it. And now, to finish us off, I suppose let's do some gaming. To start off, it's Bejeweled 2. What, did you not know this was SteelsOfLiquid? As much of a meme it is of me to show this game, it is period correct, and it's a very fun game. I was able to pull off some good moves, and yeah, I think we should move on because otherwise I'm gonna get really invested in this game. Next up is Touhou 8, Imperishable Night. This is a bullet hell game, and I'm playing on easy mode. Again, something I've showcased a couple times on this channel before. It's a relatively fun game, knowing that it's difficult, and I was able to get through stage 2, but stopped because, again, I don't want to get too sidetracked. Something I haven't shown before, however, is Madden NFL 2003. This is a gridiron game that I don't really know how to play. I went with the Detroit Lions and Carolina Panthers because Detroit, but I kept getting stuck and I didn't know what to do. Using the default team's config did not help either, so I think we should just move on. Next, there's Halo Combat Evolved, which was ported to PC in 2003, despite being a launch title for the Xbox, which was released at around the same time as Windows XP. I clearly forgot when weapons are obtained in this game, but once I figured it out, I figured it out. I also feel like, even though this was easy mode, it was a bit more of, there were some surprise things, but nothing too difficult to overcome, probably because I'm playing in the easy mode. And last but not least, SimCity 4. This is is a city builder game, and I've looked at it only once before in my 2025 edition of this video. I opted for the tutorial, which was going well, at least until the game crashed. I then started again and opted to go right into the game. It's something I wish I could look more at, but haven't. So with that, that's gonna do it for gaming. And that's Windows XP. To conclude, it was released almost 25 years ago, and I would argue it's still very much usable in 2026. At the bare minimum, you've got a great system for gaming. Even if you don't have Steam access anymore, a lot of games did not introduce these advanced things until the Windows Vista in 7 days. Web browsing is perfectly fine, albeit a little deteriorated, and you should be very careful about security, and there's still a decent number of programs that support Windows XP. Would you agree? Did you use Windows XP back in the day? Do you still use Windows XP? If so, what's it like? Is there something I forgot to bring up? Is there something I could do to improve my content? If you have anything to say, feel free to let me know down below in the comments, in my Discord server, or by email, and feel free to give this video a like. But that's gonna do it for this video, so thanks for watching, and have a nice day.